Meet Brett Ryan, the seasoned marketing hero who's conquered quests in video game realms, battled through B2B SaaS software dungeons, and navigated the tricky mazes of ed tech. Currently donning the title of Vice President of Product Marketing at Aria Software. Did I say that right?
Yep.
He's also a fractional CMO, a master strategist at Everlast Brands, equipped with the ultimate power-ups in branding. That's like a dad joke in and of itself. Okay? Brett penned Brand Together, the epic tome born from his own marketing adventures, serving as the legendary guide everybody marketing hero craves in their pixelated journey. With that, we'll turn it over to Brett.
Wow.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I got to turn this mic on. Okay. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me. So I wrote a book. It's getting published in April. It's called Brand Together. And the premise of the book is that it examines about 15 or 16 brand partnerships that have driven over $100 million in revenue, analyzes what made those brand partnerships successful, or in some cases unsuccessful, and then distills that down to 6 golden principles of brand partnerships that if you apply, if you're doing partnership work, the likelihood of success for that partnership goes up a great deal. So one common misconception about brand partnerships is that you have to be a big brand to participate in one. And that's not the case. That's part of what I want to cover tonight, but James, if you'll click, I have an agenda for you guys. First, I'm going to give you an introduction, introduce myself a little bit, and then help unpack, like, why are we talking about brand partnerships? Why did I decide to write this book? Why did I pursue this in my career? And go ahead and click again. Then I'm going to spend just a very short amount of time, and I'm going to talk about all 6 principles with you guys. We're not going to go in depth into each one because candidly, there's not enough time. So I've picked a few of them that I think we could dive a little bit deeper in and explore them a bit more, but a couple of them, unfortunately, we won't have time to get to tonight. And then after that, we will have some time for Q&A. So when I was putting this presentation together, I really wanted to focus on how do these principles apply to small brands specifically? Because most people don't work for a mega brand, right? The overwhelming majority of businesses are not a household name. So coming and speaking to you guys, I just thought I'd take that angle a little bit more with the material. And so, yeah, with that, okay, there's a company in Idaho Falls called LabStats. It is a software as a service company. They sell tools to university IT teams that basically help them track hardware and software usage. I was the head of marketing over there for about 5 years, and while I was there, we went from about 2.5 to 8.5 million in revenue. After that, I was vice president of marketing, former vice president of marketing. I actually recently concluded that assignment, Luke, and I could talk about this company all day. Huge SaaS company based out of Austin, Texas. They did about 450 million in revenue across 150 products. I was a vice president of product marketing there, and I had responsibility over approximately a third of that portfolio. Then this is what one of my fractional CMO clients right now is Everlast Brands in Idaho Falls. It is a small portfolio of companies that includes Flood and Fire Solutions, which is a water damage and fire restoration company. It also includes Flat Rate Metal, which manufactures residential metal for think like sheet metal for gutters, drip edge on roofs, things like that. And then finally, they have a equipment rental business called Dry It Yourself Center, which is basically a DIY arm of water damage restoration. So if you go home and there's 2 inches of water in your apartment, call me and we'll get it figured out, okay? And I'm building marketing there right now.
Could you explain what fractional CMO is?
Sure.
A lot of people know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what that means is it's a part-time assignment, which many small businesses do not have the cash flow, or really, it would be fiscally irresponsible for them to bring on a full-time marketing executive. But when you're small, that's when you need the most strategic help, right? And so fractional CMO, that's a model where I can help a company for a small portion of my time, 5 to 10 hours a week, help set strategy, set some directionality, help getting operations set up, but then really hand it over to whatever marketers are operating at that company. Actually, for Flood and Fire, we just hired a graduate of BYU Idaho, Kate Rollins. I don't know if anyone knows her. Super sharp gal. Today was the last day of her second week there. She's awesome. We'll be hiring a couple more into that portfolio companies over the next couple of months. So that's all it is. It's a part-time assignment. The idea is I can go in and do 5 to 10 hours of strategy work, and they can run with it. And it's a much more reasonable cash commitment for those businesses. Great question. Okay. All right. Why brand partnerships? This was my first marketing job. I didn't graduate with a business degree. I graduated with a poli-sci degree. But my first job in marketing was at this firm. I started there as a customer service rep, eventually found myself in a marketing position. And this company was a video game publisher. So think about like a book publisher, right? An author will bring a manuscript to a publisher. They will handle the marketing and distribution of that book, help get it on bookshelves. Same thing with video game developers, right? These brilliant folks make these amazing products and they have no idea how to sell them. And so that's what we did. So there's me. Thank you. See, the red circle helps. That was our team. I loved this job. And when I was here, I got my very first brand partnership assignment. And I want to tell you a little bit about the product I worked on at this stage in my career. I worked on a video game called Terra, which is a massively multiplayer online game or a live service game. Its closest competitor would be a game like World of Warcraft, right? And a live service game, that's a product that it's updated continuously, right? It's not just you buy one and the sequel comes out. The product itself is constantly evolving. And so one of my responsibilities relative to this product is every time we would have a major content update or push something new into the game, it was my job to market that to our customers and get them to buy the associated digital items with that update, right? And so in summer of 2015, we were releasing a new class into this video game. This is class-based, okay? This game, think like it's high fantasy. Think like Lord of the Rings. There's like wizards and guys who use swords and guys who use axes, and just think of like kind of your typical Lord of the Rings kind of fantasy archetypes. And there were things in this game that represented that. We had a new character coming out that was none of those. It was called the Brawler, okay? And it was this woman who used these, think of like a steampunk like MMA fighter, right? Huge battle gauntlets, liked to punch stuff. If you watch MMA, you can probably imagine how this character would approach combat, right? And this is an in-game sprite of what that character looked like. And we knew this update was coming down the pipe in December of 2015. We started working on it that summer in about June-ish, July-ish. And so we're working on it. We're thinking, how are we going to sell this? What are we going to do? And our company, we'd done brand partnerships before. I hadn't been involved with them, but we'd done before. And one day my boss comes to me. He says, it'd be really cool. What if we partnered with Ronda Rousey for this release? And this is 2015, so you guys are young, so maybe you don't remember this, but like in 2015, Ronda was like the peak, like the face of women's sport entertainment. Biggest name, biggest card, huge celebrity brand. And so the thought was like, well, we look at how she fights and we kind of imagine how her character would be, and we're like, all right, maybe. And I told my boss, I'm like, I'll think about it. Thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, you know what? That might work. Let's try it. Let's try partnering with Ronda Rousey for this release. And so I went to work at it, and we reached out to her management team, started engaging in negotiations with her, started laying the work for a partnership, and things were going well. We were kind of getting to the end stages of the negotiation, and we felt like we were getting pretty strong commitment from her management staff. We're feeling really good about it. And then one day, we had a meeting with her management team. They came to that meeting and they said, hey, Rhonda has received a competing offer from another video game product, and that offer has an exclusivity clause. So you need to meet this fee or we're done here. And the fee they asked for was more than our entire marketing budget for the release. And so, 6 weeks into this project, my work just went up in smoke, just poof, gone. And I'm like, what the heck happened? I was really frustrated. It felt like things were going well. And I thought to myself, this brand partnership thing can't be black magic, right? People know how to do this. There's got to be some principles out there that I can apply to figure out how to do this. So I scoured the internet looking for information on how to do brand partnerships. I couldn't find a thing. There's a little bit more now. You can find some content on how to do it now, but there's not really deep thinking on how to do these well, and they're not really trying to approach it in a way that any business can apply it. And so I wrote the book I wish I had. That's where the book comes from. We'll get into that in a minute. Here's how the story ended. In November of that year, it was announced that Rhonda was retained by Electronic Arts. If you know anything about video games, they're like an 800-pound gorilla. They've got more money than our whole company. And they purchased her partnership for the release of UFC 2. That game did $37 million in its first week of sales. For reference, our company was doing about 21 a year for our products. And then that game went on to sell $132 million. Huge product, right? But our perception is that we kind of dodged a bullet there, because in November of 2015, Rhonda fought Holly Holm and got crushed, absolutely crushed. And her brand changed overnight in a huge way. And I remember we're sitting there after we watched that fight, and my buddy who works with me leans over to me after she lost. He's like, dude, we kind of dodged a bullet on that one. And I'm like, I agree. But it got me thinking, like, how do you account for that kind of thing in a partnership, right? If you're going into a brand partnership with another company, whether it's a celebrity brand or another company, how do you account for the fact that their brand could change in a really significant way? And so it got me thinking, and was kind of lead me down this path, this book, right? Okay, here's the 6 principles, okay? We're gonna dive deep. So, okay, share goals and outcomes, align risks and rewards, 1 + 1 must equal 3, clarify your brand's equity. We're gonna get into that one tonight. The principle of hedonic symmetry. I love this one, and we're gonna talk about it tonight. And then creating compelling experiences for your customers. So we're gonna talk about 4 and 5 for sure. And if we have time, then we can get into the third one. But guys, I'm not practiced enough at this yet to give it to you really quick. So let's start with clarifying your brand's equity. So, in the summer of 2019, Marvel and Doritos partnered together. There was a new Spider-Man movie coming out. Spider-Man Far From Home movie, okay? I know Marvel's kind of had some missteps, or I don't know what the opinion is. I don't know if kids think Marvel's cool anymore, but in 2019, Marvel was cool. And this movie was awesome. So I interviewed a brand partnership manager at Doritos for my book. And this is his story. I'm gonna share it with you. So Marvel approached Doritos for a partnership to promote this film. And as part of the negotiations for that partnership, Doritos insisted that Marvel insisted that Doritos contribute to a big media buy. Hey, we want to run television campaigns where we're promoting the movie. We want you, it's expensive. We want you to we want to run these nationally. We want you to go in on it. And Kyle Aronson, who's the brand partnership manager, he said, no, I don't think we should do that. He said, you got to realize part of what Doritos brings to the table is we can put your film's characters on 100 million little billboards in grocers and retailers around the world. That is part of the brand equity we bring to the table. And so Marvel is probably the best in the world at what they do, right? Write cool superhero stories, make cool superhero movies. They have no context at all for packaging and producing corn chips, working with grocers and other retail outlets, distributing the habits of customers. They have no idea how any of that works. And so Kyle, the partnership manager there, had to clarify the equity that Doritos brings to a partnership like that, which is crazy to think about because Marvel and Doritos are huge brands, household names. Everyone knows these guys. So there's a couple of takeaways for this story, right? First, a partnership between these huge, massive brands still requires these clarifying conversations, right? Just because you're a household name, you can't assume people know what you do. Second, you can't expect anyone to understand your brand's equity as well as you do. You run a business, you provide a product or a service. Good marketers, I would say great marketers, clarify what their brand means to their customers. Very few create clear equity about what they can bring to partnerships. One of the takeaways for a small company is if you want to be a partnership candidate for any kind of brand partnership, you better get real good clarity on what your brand's equity is. What do you actually bring to the table? How are you going to negotiate a partnership if you don't understand that, right? If other companies can't understand what you offer and they're not going to understand it off the jump, you're going to have to explain it to them. So the third takeaway is if you're a small brand, work really hard to understand what that equity is. What do you bring to the table? It's important for partners, not just your consumers, right? So that makes sense? Any questions about that principle at all? Clear as mud?
It's really clear.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. I've engaged in some small brand partnerships here and there, and that sometimes is the thing that keeps you or prevents you from really connecting.
Yeah.
And like making something actually happen is, what do we have to offer them?
Yep.
And you don't even know what you have to offer them. You just know you want them to be your partner.
Yep.
And sometimes it's the other way around, where you know what you have to offer them, but they don't understand that, or
Yeah.
it can go both ways. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So let me give you an example. You're exactly right. So people assume that people view brand partnerships very narrowly through the lens of awareness, right? If you're a small company, we want to partner with someone big so we get in front of their customer base and that's going to be great for us. But a lot of big companies, you know what mega brands care about? Brands that have solved an awareness problem. Doritos has 99% consumer awareness in the US. You can't find anyone who doesn't know about them, right? 55% of households have eaten Doritos in the past 30 days at any given day. You can't find they're just, the billboard space that they sell, it's ubiquitous, right? You know what big brands care about? They care about relevance. Because people can be aware of your product, but it might not be relevant, right? I'll give you another example. Bud Light, they've been controversial lately, right? But a couple of years ago, they partnered with Post Malone and did the Post Malone Bud Light dive bar tour, right? Do you think Bud Light, the brand partnership managers, they are counting beans to make sure that, does Post Malone, their audience this big and how big is ours? No. They want to partner with someone like Post Malone because he is extremely culturally relevant, right? If Post Malone drinks Bud Light, that means our target audience, our young demographic, that's saying, hey, Bud Light is cool, it's for you, right? They care about relevance.
And Dylan Mulvaney.
There's the controversy, right? But yeah, that was a play for relevance. And that's going to get a little bit into the next principle we talk about the hedonic values. But, go ahead, question?
Yeah, so in regards to a brand partnership,
Yeah.
I could imagine that it's not an exact 50-50 as far as the takeaway. So how is it decided, because I'd imagine one brand is obviously going to be more successful on the deal than the other.
Sure.
Is there like a certain margin that people play at, or how's that decided?
Well, so individual deals are going to differ, right? Typically, the architecture of a brand partnership is, unless there's a huge discrepancy in the size and the maturity of the firms, typically that's an agreed upon architecture, right? But back up a little bit, back up to the 6 principles, James. The first 2 principles, sorry, you got to go all the way back. These first 2 help you solve for that, right? Sharing goals and outcomes and aligning on risks and rewards. So I'll tell you a story. When I was writing this book, I reached out to a couple of big brands. Hey, I'm writing this book on brand partnerships. You did this partnership with these people. I'd love to feature you. I'd love to talk about your partnership. 8 times out of 10, nah, no thanks. You're an unknown author. Why would we work with you? The risks and rewards weren't aligned, right? If it goes well, I stand to gain outsized rewards. If I light them up in my book, no, they did so bad and blah, 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 the risk-reward profile was not appropriate for them, right? So if you want to increase the likelihood of your partnership success, the alignment of the risk and rewards will be appropriate, right? So when you see brands partner, sometimes, let's go back to Post Malone and Bud Light, the idea of increasing the relevance of their product by a couple of percentage points, whatever Post Malone took from the deal, in their estimation, the risks and rewards were aligned, right? Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? Any other questions? Yeah.
So if you're like a smaller brand trying to work with a bigger brand and maybe you're not sure what your equity is, how do you figure that out?
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of having your own brand, is you can figure that out. You can determine that, right? So there's a lot of folks want to be like influencers or creators, right? When I was at NMass, I ran a lot of influencer marketing programs. And the influencer partners that did the best for us were the ones that were super passionate about our product. I published a zombies game once, right? Zombies are always big. It's a game called Zombies, Monsters, and Robots. Take a couple guesses what that one was about. And we partnered with a lot of YouTube creators to generate publicity and sales for the game. Some of them were huge, like front page of YouTube, but the ones that did the best for us as far as driving signups and purchases and actual throughput were like these tiny channels that they did nothing but like playthroughs or reviews of zombie games, right? They were like dialed in, and they curated an audience that was super into our product, right? So the brand, the value they brought to us in a partnership was a highly, highly engaged audience for our product, right? So it's like, how do you make yourself attractive to larger brand partners? First thing you can do is curate a really highly engaged audience who loves your stuff. That's a good place to start. Does that answer your question? Any other questions about that before how are we doing on time, by the way? Okay, and how long do we have? Okay, we're doing okay. All right, let's go on to the next one. Hedonic symmetry, okay? So that's a confusing term. It's nice and scientific-y. So we're gonna look at a couple of brand partnerships. These are all real, by the way. These are real brand partnerships. Here's one. Do you know KFC partnered with Susan G. Komen, the Breast Cancer Research Foundation? Awareness Foundation. Do you guys know that? It's a real thing. Google it, look it up. How about this one? Here's a part, you guys know about this one? Shell and Lego, it's a pretty big one. Talk about this one a fair bit in the book. Kind of odd, right? How about this one? Louis Vuitton and League of Legends. Anyone know what League of Legends is? It's a video game. Kind of weird partnership, right? It's like, that doesn't really make sense. How about this one? Lot Mart is a South Korean chicken company. They make fried chicken. RoboCop and Lot Mart. How about that one? It's a little weird, isn't it? So it turns out when a brand partnership feels off, when it doesn't quite feel right, it turns out there's a scientific term to describe this phenomenon. It's called hedonic asymmetry. A good jumping off point for this principle is that a brand is not simply colors, logos, and visuals. Sometimes that's referred to as the visual identity of a brand, vis-ID. You can have a vis-ID in art. You know, how does our brand look in art? How does our brand look in photography? Do we have a visual identity in photography, right? If we were to put our photos up on an otherwise unbranded website, the litmus test is that your visual identity is strong enough that if your logo is not there, people would be able to pick it out. I would argue that BYU Idaho has a pretty strong visual identity in photos, right? You remove the brand, they got a really consistent visual identity. Some brands do this really well. So everything that's not visual logos, the intangible kind of emotional associations we make with brands, those are called the hedonic elements of a brand. So let's give an example of a hedonically symmetrical partnership, okay? So think about Cold Stone Creamery, okay? Everything about Cold Stone's brand is positioned to be premium, right? Think about the fact, first of all, they call themselves a creamery. That distinguishes them from Baskin Robbins or the froyo places around town. Think about the marble slabs that they put your ice cream together on, right? Think about the fact that it's not a self-serve froyo line where anyone can run through and little kids are dropping stuff on the floor, and it's everything about their presentation is meant to reinforce this idea of them being a premium brand. So they partner with various snack food brands for their toppings, right? All these snack food brands seek to place themselves in a premium positioning for their categories, right? Now I get it, maybe in the grand scheme of things, Oreo cookies aren't premium, but in the context of snack cookies, they are considered a premium brand, right? Same thing with Jell-O pudding, same thing with Jelly Belly. And so this brand partnership makes sense for all companies involved because these three brands want the hedonic association of a premium experience offered by premium products. Does that make sense? So we would describe this brand partnership as being hedonically symmetrical. So here's a couple questions, if you're a small brand, that you can ask yourself. Because just like your equity, you have total control over what the hedonic elements of your brand are. So if I'm a small brand, this is what I'm asking myself. What ideas do we want customers, vendors, business partners, employees, and the public to associate with our brand? What do we want them to think of when they think of our brand? If we could only pick one idea that customers associated with our brand, what would it be? Would it be customer service? Would it be reasonable pricing? Would it be, what if you could pick two ideas or three, right? Obviously you can do more than one. What would you like your brand to stand for or represent? What imagery do you want customers to think of when they hear your brand name, right? These are all questions that will help you get to the bottom of what are the hedonic elements of our brand. So just like companies have a visual identity, which is logos and all the items that constitute that. They should also have a non-visual identity that's constituted of hedonic elements. That helps you because not all media, not all marketing channels are visual. What if you want to run an ad on Spotify? Your logo doesn't help you a lot there. Now you can do an audio logo. Audio logos are great. You know what audio logos are. You've heard them before. Stuff like ba-da-ba-ba-ba or we are farmers, right? You can think of them, right? You can do things like audio logos. Okay, that gets you part of the way there. What are you gonna say? What's the voiceover gonna say? What is that ad actually gonna, what are the actors gonna say? What are we gonna do? You draw all of that and align that with the hedonic elements of your brand, right? So, the idea here, before we get into this example, the idea is if you want a brand partnership to be successful, the hedonic elements of the partnering brands should be aligned. If they're not, the chance that partnership goes sideways increases a lot. So let's look at an example to unpack this idea of hedonic brand elements a little more. Okay, say you work for Regional Phone Company, a small regional cell phone brand, right? And let's say, for example, that the way you distinguish yourself from your competitors is by having customer-friendly policies, generous plan rates, and 24/7 customer support. You can already kind of start to imagine what the hedonic elements of this brand would be, can't you? You can already kind of start to approach it and think about it. But let's just say, for discussion's sake, that we have formally decided on a few, and that we've decided our hedonic brand elements are the three following. One, human, not corporate. Customers before profits, and no frustration phone plans, okay? Imagine how the marketing campaigns for this company might differ depending on which hedonic brand element you wanted to emphasize the most. Can you imagine how the copy might be a little bit different, how the ad execution might differ just a little bit? So in this hypothetical, you have an opportunity to strongly define the hedonic elements that customers most closely associate with your brand. Does that make sense? Think of a company like Mint Mobile, right? First of all, you think Ryan Reynolds, right? But second of all, you think inexpensive phone service, right? They've got a great, strong clarity or hedonic direction in their branding elements. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Brett,
Yeah.
Can you define the word hedonic?
Yeah. Hedonic simply means non-visual. A more precise definition would be intangible, right? You can't touch it or feel it. It's a concept. It's an idea.
And it evokes a pleasant feeling, usually, right? That's part of the definition?
So,
It's a pleasant identity.
yeah.
Which is why Louis Vuitton works well with League of Legends, right? Because there's a pleasantness in knowing you can get a bag or a pouch or whatever it is in the game
Yeah.
to carry your
Yeah.
tools. Or
Well, I
whatever
could
it is.
I could talk a long time about one,
Right?
but yes.
It's the pleasant association with
Yeah.
something else. That's what hedonic means.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a pleasant feeling
Yeah.
between the costumes.
You're absolutely right. There's harmony there,
Yes.
right?
Harmony is a great word, yep.
Okay, go ahead and click. Did that make sense? Any question? How are we doing on time?
7:40.
7:40? Okay. Do we, yes, sir.
So how do you end up with these big brand deals, like Susan G. Komen and KFC, where it just like,
Yeah.
nothing there seems to fit, but they're
Yeah.
both huge entities.
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen? How do you screw that up?
It's part of the reason.
One word that seems to connect them.
What's, oh. Yeah. So, that, look, I'm with you. It's part of the reason I wrote the book. Here's the reality, is that even big brands get this wrong, right? Even big brands get this wrong. And even across, like, brands that are household names, they don't all apply the principles of brand partnership success equally. It's part of the reason I wrote the book. Here's something interesting about working in brand partnerships. You know how you get a job in brand partnerships today? They don't teach it in school, right? There's no brand partnership management classes. There's no curriculum for it. The way you get a job in brand partnership management today is you go work for a company that's good at brand partnerships, and you learn how that specific company does brand partnerships. I'll tell you what, I interviewed over 50 brand partnership professionals for this book, and not a single one approaches them exactly the same. And they apply the principles of brand partnership success in varying degrees. Some do it better than others. Sometimes you get a KFC and a Susan G. Komen, and it's like, who greenlit this, you know?
Did it not work?
No, it got some pretty negative press. I can't remember. I quoted in my book, I can't remember off the top of my head, there was the wife of a Democratic senator that lit these guys up really hard. And there was a lot of commentary in the blogosphere about like, what is this? Like, you're selling us like cancer-causing chicken, you know, for a breast. There's a lot of hedonic asymmetry there. Does that make sense?
Asymmetry, yes.
Yeah.
Asymmetry is bad, symmetry
Yes,
is good.
symmetry is good, yes.
Hedonic.
Yeah.
Bad, right?
But I mean, does that make sense? So sorry, let me back up about the way that folks learn how to do this. And so what I found when I was doing interviews for this book, every single brand partnership manager that I interviewed, the thing that inspired me to write the book is like, I want to know how other brands are doing this. How are the most successful? How did Nike and Jordan happen, right? I talk about that one in my book too. And you know what the tough thing about that partnership was? Is that it excelled in every single principle. They applied those principles perfectly. So my challenge was, all right, I'm going to narrow this down and use it as an example of executing one of these principles well, right? But the best brand partnerships apply them all well, but there's a tragic lack of intradisciplinary conversation about brand partnership management. Just don't get together and talk, right? So it is what it is. Part of the reason I was inspired to write it, so. Any other questions about, yes, sir?
Well, not about this. Maybe this is more of a question for the end. So either say this or at the end, or you can answer now. But
Yeah.
what is one of your, like, in doing all this research and interviewing all these people, you put a lot of time into it. What's your favorite partnership in the past 10 years? Like
10 years?
And it doesn't have to go back that far, maybe to the past few years. But
10 years is tough. I'll tell you that my favorite one that I saw last year was Barbie. Barbie movie. Out of all the brand partnerships I analyzed, I never saw one that did as many as Barbie did. Over 100 different brand partners. They crushed it, and it really showed up at the box office. And you know why? I get it, sorry, I keep saying, oh, I talk about it in the book, but I can't unpack it all right now. Part of the appeal about brand partnerships is we live in a world where consumers are really desensitized to advertising. We can almost just like, people are running ad block. I'm not looking at billboards. You know, I'm not paying attention to the marketing in front of me. And the reality is it's way more fun to wear pink Crocs, eat bubblegum flavored ice cream, rent a Barbie themed Airbnb, than it is to sit through another television ad saying, go see the Barbie movie, right? Look at the difference in the box office performance between Barbie and Mean Girls. Mean Girls went with the traditional media route, right? They're doing television ads and all that, and they're struggling. Barbie, partnership team crushed it. Yes, they had a $100 million advertising budget, but we've seen bigger budgets than that fall on their face, right? Not do well. It was the partnerships that made the difference, right? Does that help?
yeah, no, that's good.
Sorry, did that answer?
No,
So I
yeah,
love
that's
Barbie.
just- yeah, like, I didn't see that. It didn't work on me because I haven't.
Yeah,
still.
yeah.
But I know that, like, my wife and all of her girlfriends
Yeah.
and all of the whole world was watching.
got,
it.
like-
I know what's going on. I just didn't see the movie.
They had like the booths that you could step in like you're a Barbie doll and take a photo. That's way cooler than watching a TV ad, right? Another one I really liked recently is Lego and Fortnite. Amazing. Holy cow, they're knocking it out of the park. Let's see, what's another one I really liked? Those are the ones that come to mind right now. Go ahead.
I say, did you see the one that really flopped hard?
Which one?
With Snoop Dogg and the
Ah,
fireplace?
yeah.
The CMO got let go today.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
yesterday.
yeah. I have some thoughts on that. I'm not gonna, I won't unpack them right now, but I think there's a larger misalignment in that firm about approaching marketing broadly, but that's outside of the scope of this presentation, so I won't talk about it. Questions? Any other? Yes, sir.
I've got one for you.
Yeah.
How about small partnerships?
Yeah.
Like local.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of these were big brands.
Yep.
How do you, or do you have examples of local companies?
Sure.
doing this?
Yeah. There's examples of small companies doing this. So I don't have one locally for our area, if that's what you mean. But I'm 100% confident that these principles could work for two small local companies. Exact same principles, right? If you apply them, they'll work. But one is, there's a company called sorry, I'll come to you right after this, okay? There's a company called TUI Solutions in Florida, and they sell printers. Printers, scanners, and Xerox machines, right? Part of the reason they sell Xerox machines is because they courted a brand partnership with Xerox, which is a massive company. It's a huge company. It's a household name. Xerox is not exactly relevant today. I mentioned this earlier. What TUI Solutions did well is their customers love them. They sell like primary target customers like small businesses. Hey, retain us as your vendor for your printing equipment. We'll service it, we'll repair it. We are Xerox experts. And because they're so good at what they do, they can get small businesses in the larger Florida region excited about using Xerox. Who gets excited about using Xerox products? They're not a sexy brand. They're not cool. But once again, because they've gotten their customer base so excited about their products, their service, then a much larger brand is really anxious to partner with them. Does that, I mean, I think you're asking about like a partnership between two very small brands.
Yeah, so an example is like the local Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
It's a dinner for two plus an escape room. So
Yeah.
both of them came together to do that. And
Yeah. So here's my thinking on that. If both those companies aren't ready to apply these principles, now we're going to talk about 1 + 1 must equal 3. If the benefit of partnering with another brand, if the time, resources, effort that firm invests in that partnership does not outproduce what that firm could accomplish if they just went it alone, there's no reason to partner. Most small brands are not in a position to apply these principles well. So the answer is, don't partner yet. You don't have to be big, but you do have to be ready to apply these principles. Because if you can't, your time is probably better spent just investing in your own brand, solving for these ideas. Does that make sense? So it's harder to find like small on small, just because the likelihood of one partner not being in a position to apply the principles goes up pretty strongly.
I just thought of another one.
Yeah.
Regionally.
Yeah.
Lawrence's Chocolate and Desert Book.
Yeah.
It's only regional.
Yeah.
So there are some good local ones
Absolutely.
to think about.
Absolutely. And you start to think about what are the hedonic elements of Deseret Books brand, right? Sorry, that's me beeping. And how does that overlap with Florence Chocolate, right?
Yeah.
Something's working there. I can't analyze it on the spot, right? But probably dig into that a little bit. Is that helpful? I know that's not a great answer to your question, James. Megan.
Is it fair to say for like those small businesses that want to partner, like they can start working on these and understanding their brand and like all of what they can bring
Yeah, so the question I think I'm hearing is, when is the appropriate time to explore brand partnerships? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
There's a couple ways to think about that. Got an entire chapter dedicated to that, but I'll give you the cliff notes. One heuristic is if another brand can approach you having done some of the mental lifting for a partnership, they can kind of start to imagine what that partnership would look like, what the product would be, what the result would be, then that's an indication that the equity of your brand is clear enough that a partner could work with it, right? Another heuristic is kind of the inverse of that. Do we understand enough of our brand that if we found ourselves in a partnership discussion, that we know exactly what we would offer? If the answer is yes, you could probably start meaningfully exploring brand partnerships. Does that make sense? Yes.
Kind of going off of that, like, how do you approach a brand? Like, if you've decided, like, I know that I can offer this to, like, this kind of brand, and, like, how do you, I don't know, how do you approach them? How do you, like, do you email? Do you set up a meeting?
Yeah. Great.
That's scary to me.
Yeah, that's great. It's going to vary. It's going to vary for brand to brand. With Ronda Rousey, it was emails, emailing a management team. Sometimes you got to find them on Twitter. Sometimes you got to find them through social media. I mean, if you don't have an existing relationship, then you're doing cold outreach, right? But I'm gonna say the same thing, which is like, if your offering's really clear, you can say really succinctly, hey, here's who I am. This is what I do. This is what I think I could bring to the table. Would love to collaborate, right? You're not wasting your time, right? You get to the good stuff and you help them see really, really quickly what kind of equity you can bring to the table. I think the likelihood of success goes up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I didn't answer your question. The answer to your question is I don't know. That's going to vary, right? I don't think I have anything prescriptive from like a specific approach, just however you can get a hold of their brand management staff, right?
Follow-up question?
Yeah.
And you're like, when you're like pitching,
Yeah.
like, do you only say like, this is what I can do, or do you also like, I don't know, say like, I hope like this, like what the other brand might be able to do?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you kind of like set that expectation of like, I hope to do this for your company, and I hope like we can help?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
I personally do that. I will say, here's what I think I can offer you. Here's what I think you could offer us. This is why I think it would be meaningful to partner, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. Let's go back to Ronda Rousey, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you how we pitched her. We said, hey, look, here's our video game character. Here's some footage of how she plays and fights. This character is really aggressive, destroys everyone, is super overpowered, just this incredibly powerful female boxing character. We think that aligns with your professional athletic brand because we think you're powerful and you're unstoppable. And we think this would be, people would see that partnership, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's Rhonda. She's trashing everyone, you know, in this video game, right? And so it would be a way to build on her brand, right? So we make that equity very clear, right? It's good. Look, if you're a celebrity, it's a pretty big deal to be in a video game. Who's in a video game, right? I went to high school with a guy who he played in the NFL for a couple of years. And I remember when he was already signed with a college team when he was going away, when he was graduating from high school. He walked around all of senior year saying, I'm going to be in a video game next year. I'm going to be on whatever college team he was on, right? It's a huge deal for a celebrity to be in a digital product like that, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but what other, yes, sir?
I was gonna say, when I was probably like 10 or 11 years old, I made that a life goal. It hasn't happened yet. So if anybody has any ideas, I think I was playing NBA Jam. Everybody older remembers that game. I was like, sweet character in a video game. So,
Yeah, I remember that
so
game.
he's speaking the truth.
Yeah, it's a big deal, you guys. So, any other questions at all?
Where can I buy your book?
Oh, where or when? So it's not out yet, guys. It publishes in, so okay, all right. I know there's like no pitching here.
I asked a question.
Okay.
Will you answer it, please?
The answer is that at the last slide on this deck, there's a QR code that you can pre-order it on. Yeah, it's hidden.
Where was that?
Very last one. Keep going. No, you gotta, so it's hidden. You gotta back out. Click on the very last one and blow it up. And if you guys want to, there it is. If you want to, you can okay, so hold on a sec. If you're gonna pre-order it, use a checkout code Snake River DMC, and you can get it for 15 bucks instead of 20, okay?
Partnership.
Yeah, yeah. It publishes in April. I'm really excited about it, but I'm also really, really nervous because I'm a first-time author, right? So, thank you for that question. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Snake River DMC, no spaces. What other questions do you guys have? Yes, sir.
So, obviously, brand partnership is such an effective way of reaching the audiences.
Yeah.
You know, like the outbound aspect. So, how would you compare brand partnerships to, like, just pumping advertisements in every form?
Yeah.
Collaborating with influencers, maybe this
Yeah.
brand partnership. But it seems like the brand partnership seems like a much more effective approach for
Yep.
acquiring new people. Like, what is your thoughts on that brand partnerships in comparison to other methods and its effectiveness and how?
Sure. So I'll say that the best brand partnerships share some attributes with the best advertising. The best marketing ever, like just objectively, the best marketing provides more value to the consumer than simply making them aware of the product. Let me give you an example. A really famous ad agency out of Utah, you've probably heard of them. They're called the Harmon Brothers. And they make these amazing viral YouTube campaigns, right? One of their favorite spots for me was Poo-Pourri. You remember that? It's like bathroom spray, right? It's like there are so many bathroom spray products on the market. And the reason their videos do so well is because, you know, the video is only 4 minutes long, but 90 seconds into it, you're already like 10 punchlines deep. They are so funny, and they're so humorous, and you want to share them. There's value there that you want to share with people. Does that make sense? If you provide more value than simply making someone aware of your product or service, the effectiveness notches up. So the best brand partnerships do that the same way the best advertising does it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They share qualities. So to answer your question, you could have extremely effective traditional advertising campaigns, but they have to be executed in such a way where they provide more value. The thing about a brand partnership, and we didn't get in today, the last principle is creating compelling experiences for your consumers, right? One of my favorite brand partnerships, here's another answer to your question. 7 or 8 years ago, Verizon Wireless partnered with the NBA, and they did this Data Dunks campaign for the playoffs. The idea was, as any Verizon Wireless customer, you could put together your dunk team consisting of players from any team on the playoff roster. And every time one of those players dunked, you got like $50 of data, like on your plan. That's pretty cool. Suddenly you've got NBA lovers like, oh, whoa, let me check out, I've never used Verizon in my life. Let me take a look, that sounds cool. You've got Verizon Wireless customers who maybe don't even like basketball, all of a sudden hyper invested in the playoffs because they want their players to dunk and to win free data. Suddenly Verizon Wireless has this super awesome, legitimate reason to be a part of like post-game analysis and stats discussions and kind of like the meta content surrounding the game. Suddenly they're front and center of all that stuff because they're creating this really compelling experience for both brands' audiences. Does that make sense? So it's kind of the same thing. The product of our brand partnership is a really compelling experience. The best advertising creates that value above and beyond, which kind of maps to a lot of the same ideas. That make sense?
All right, we have one more question.
I have one, nobody else does. So, a handful of years ago, I was looking at, partnering with influencers, and I looked at some marketplaces. My experience was I got a whole bunch of like Instagram models that were really trashy that wanted to be influencers.
Yep.
Are there good marketplaces like that to connect brands with?
Yeah.
Or is it all just junk?
Great question. There's a number of companies that are starting to get into that space where they retain like a curated portfolio of influencers, and none of them are going to do the hard work of applying the principles of brand partnerships for you, right? If you don't have your house in order as far as these principles are concerned, doesn't matter what's in their portfolio, right? This is your tool set to kind of be selective. And the dirty secret is that most brands don't want to partner with most other brands. If you're looking through a portfolio of influencers, 999 out of 1,000 are probably not a good fit for your brand. So you make that process much more streamlined and efficient by being able to apply all these principles to your brand. Then it becomes really easy. We know what we're looking for. This one will work, this one won't. Doesn't mean everyone's going to be a screaming success, but your likelihood of success, you're on much better footing, right? But to answer your question directly, there's no one marketplace that I'm aware of that like I would.
You'd say, yeah, this is a good place to go.
Yeah. I think you gotta look everywhere, right?
Maybe keep it in-house. I mean, keep your partnerships in-house at first. Like, do the hard work.
Yeah.
The principles.
Yep.
And like do your outreach to people that really align with you, not just a marketplace of people that say they'll align with you, but they really.
100%. And there's some nuance here. You're exactly right. I'm sorry, I'm going over time. Are we okay? So there's a little bit of nuance there where influencers will influencers, the real successful ones have a lot of these principles sorted, right? The less successful ones, a lot of them look pretty strictly to like the company partners to define the parameters of the partnership, which is then dangerous for them because you know what the thing about influencers is they get extremely visceral and precise feedback from their audiences about the partnerships they engage in. If an influencer partners with a product that does not hedonically align with them or overlap with core elements of their brand, their audience will light them up. You're a sellout. What are you doing? You're watering yourself down. They get lit up. They're held extremely accountable, right? And so it behooves them to do that due diligence. You know, once again, varying levels of understanding. Okay, I'm done digressing there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.